This is the freshest tofu I will ever eat. Anyone who says tofu doesn't have any flavor is not eating the right tofu. This is so good.
Hello, I'm Catherine. Bryan's behind the camera, and we promised you a Tofu 101 video covering all things tofu. What it is, where to find it in your grocery store, what the different varieties are, how to store them, and of course, how to eat them. And we've had the pleasure of partnering with Soya Nova Tofu Shop for this video so that we can do it right and show you exactly what tofu is and how it is made. Soya Nova is a family-owned and operated artisan tofu shop on Salt Spring Island, and they make the best tofu we have ever had. So take a ferry ride with us over to Salt Spring Island, British Columbia, and we'll learn all about tofu. Nova herself showed us around Soya Nova's production facility, which she owns and operates with her mother, lovingly called Tofu Deb, and her brothers. They have been making their certified organic tofu since 1982, and see those beans there? Well, let's really start from the very beginning. What does the word tofu mean? Bean curd. And usually when we talk about tofu, the bean being used is soybean or soya bean, same bean with or without the extra A. And if you're familiar with edamame, that is young green soybean, but the beans usually used for tofu are mature soybeans, so that's why they're that yellow beigey color. The process of making tofu is thought to have been first documented in China over 2,000 years ago and brought to Japan, who continues to be the largest consumer and manufacturer of tofu. Soya Nova uses the traditional Japanese open cauldron method to make their tofu, and the process is quite similar to making cheese. So the first step is to go back to those soybeans and turn them into soy milk. The soybeans are soaked overnight, and then in the morning the beans are ground and the pulp, or okara, is separated from the soy milk. The soy milk is then cooked and needs to be at a rapid boil for over 12 minutes before it is safe and ready for the next step, where it is transferred into another tank to be coagulated. Nova explained to me that nagari, a natural form of magnesium chloride, is added to the cooked milk, which creates a chemical reaction that separates the protein from the water, creating curds and whey. We'll get to the different varieties of tofu in just a moment, but Nova explained to me that it's not just how tofu is pressed that determines its taste and texture. How this coagulation step is done is where the master tofu making really comes in. The curds are then pressed to create blocks of tofu, the ends are trimmed, and it's packaged or soaked in a brine and sent to the smoker to be transformed into the ultra-delicious smoked tofu. Soya Nova was actually the first company in Canada to produce smoked tofu. And it's all natural. There are no additives like liquid smoke. It's naturally cold smoked.
So everything is cold smoked and no liquid smoke is used. It's all natural, and we're using a blend either of maple, alder, and apple. I'm not quite sure, but I think that's what the blend is.
They also trim the ends of their smoked tofu, and Tetsu gave us a huge bag of all of these smoked tofu ends, and this is all that remains. We have destroyed these because they are so good. It's like eating beef jerky or pepperettes or something. And Tetsu's grandmother was actually a tofu master in Japan, so he says that his body has been made up of tofu since day one. And really, the whole team at Soya Nova, you could tell that they put so much love and dedication into the creation of these products, and you can really taste the difference, which Bryan and I will tell you all about when we taste test all of these amazing products. But now that you know what tofu is and how it's made, where do you buy it? It seems pretty straightforward, but when you're looking for something new at the grocery store, you might not know where to look. So the good thing is that tofu has been really gaining in popularity. So in North America, at least, it's quite easy to find at most large local grocery stores. It's even at Costco, folks. You're most likely going to find it in refrigerated bunkers near cheese or cold meats, or refrigerated in the produce section near salad dressings and other plant-based alternatives. So now you've found tofu at the grocery store and you're looking at soft, silken, medium, firm, extra firm, super firm, smoked, flavored, traditional. Tetsu also said that tofu has no opinions, it's so versatile. And we thought that was a great quote because it's so true. That's why you'll find so many different varieties. The three main varieties I'll focus on are soft, medium, and firm. Soft or silken tofu has the most amount of water in it, so it's almost silky and it'll totally break apart in your hands. Medium tofu has less water in it than soft, but you still have to be really gentle with it so it doesn't break apart on you. And firm tofu has the least amount of water, so you can slice it however you want, you can toss it around in a pot, and it won't break apart. Other than the difference in texture, softer varieties of tofu tend to have a more mild tofu flavor, and that's why they're often used in desserts. And the more water there is in the tofu, the less protein there is. So soft or silken tofu tends to have less protein than firm tofu, but tofu in general is a great source of protein, so I don't worry about that. Just before I get to all the delicious things you can make with tofu, I'll touch on how to store it. So when you buy a block of tofu, there will be an expiry date on it, and keep it refrigerated and use it before the expiry. If you happen to open a block of tofu and you're not going to use it all at once, you can store the leftovers. Usually when you open up a block of tofu, there's excess water around it that you drain out before you use it. If you have leftover tofu, place the leftover in a clean container and then cover it with fresh cold water and put it in the fridge with an airtight lid. That water will keep the block of tofu from drying out, so change the water every day, but use the block of tofu within the next 2 to 3 days. Oh, and listen to this bit of gold. You can freeze tofu. So if you're getting close to expiry, or if you buy a discounted block like I did, you can toss this whole thing in your freezer. You can remove it from the packaging if you'd like, drain the excess water and just put it in a freezer safe container, but you can just toss the entire thing right in your freezer. Some recipes actually tell you to use previously frozen tofu because it completely changes the texture. The water in the block of tofu crystallizes and expands, so when it defrosts, it leaves all these little air pockets that makes the tofu almost more like a sponge, and you can actually just press the excess water from it in your hands like you're pressing a sponge, and you can make cool things from it that almost mimic the texture of meat a little bit better. This block of tofu is quite firm, so there wasn't much water in it to begin with, but if you do this with a softer variety of tofu, you really will see huge holes and the texture will be so different. It will really pull apart. Oh, don't be alarmed if the tofu turns yellow in the freezer. It does that, but it'll go back to normal when it defrosts. I've just created a recipe for these tofu nuggets using previously frozen tofu, so you can try this out for yourself and see if you can taste how the texture gets chewier and a little more meat-like. Ooh, and we actually got some of this peach and pepper jelly from Salt Spring Island, and I watered it down a little bit and it made a perfect dipping sauce. That's really good. Speaking of recipes, let's get to that part. So all of the recipes are linked below for you in the description, and we have a playlist here on YouTube called Amazing Tofu Recipes, so you can find the full-length videos for many of what you'll see next, and you can watch those after this one. I feel like we should have made a game out of all the different ways you could use tofu. You can bake it, fry it, grill it, shred it, mash it, blend it, steam it. Is there anything else? Air fry it? You get my drift. So soft or silken tofu. Remember, this is the one that has the most amount of water in it. So it's silky, it's like a pudding. It'll fall apart in your hands, and it has a mild flavor. So it's perfect for using in desserts and sauces. It blends right down. So I use it for my oil-free mayo, my vegan Alfredo. I make my custard for my French toast from it. I use it for my vegan quiche, and I even have a tofu yogurt recipe on the blog. And medium tofu is a little less popular in recipes because it's obviously in the middle of soft and firm, but I have found that this texture has been perfect for a couple of my recipes. It's perfect for my vegan eggs Benedict because firm tofu was a little too firm to mimic the texture of an egg white for me, but medium tofu was just right. And it also provided the perfect texture for my vegan Portuguese custard tart. When I tried it with silken or soft tofu, it was too runny, firm tofu was too firm, and medium tofu was again just right. And as you get to use tofu more and more, you'll get used to the textures. So Soya Nova's tofu is a medium tofu, and it's on the firmer side of medium tofu. But Nova was telling us that her mother, Tofu Deb, her first name's not actually Tofu, but she's affectionately known as Tofu Deb. Tofu Deb says that you can make anything from tofu, and you can make anything from their medium firm tofu. So what they do, this was a little handy tip from Nova. She said she often boils or steams the block of medium tofu and then blends it, adding a little bit of soy milk or cashew cream or coconut milk to get it really nice and creamy and smooth. So regardless of your texture of tofu, you can pretty much make anything work. And I'm gonna have to try that steaming or boiling first and see how it goes. And finally, firm or extra firm tofu. Remember, this is the variety that has the least amount of water in it. So you can slice it any way you want, you can stir it around, it'll hold together. It'll even hold together in soups. And if you want to get really crispy tofu, then you'll notice that a lot of recipes tell you to press the excess water from your tofu. You can actually buy a store-bought pre-pressed tofu. The option that we have available to us at Costco is actually pre-pressed. And sometimes you'll find these pre-pressed versions also labeled super firm instead of extra firm. They just go even further with super firm. If you have a block of firm or extra firm tofu that still has a little bit of water in it, then there are two ways to press the excess water. You can use a tofu press, and you just put the block of tofu in the center, manipulate your tofu press however is needed to get it down onto the tofu, and drain the water for 10 to 15 minutes. If you don't have a tofu press, you could just wrap your block of tofu in a clean kitchen towel and put something heavy on top. I usually use a cutting board with some heavy cookbooks or something for some weight. Press it again for 10 to 15 minutes, and that'll draw out the excess moisture. And then you can proceed to cooking it. Oh, but to be honest, unless I'm really trying to get the crispiest tofu for a particular recipe, I usually don't bother pressing firm or extra firm tofu. If you're in a crunch, just don't press that. It's fine. Firm or extra firm tofu is the variety that I use most often, because not only do I slice it or cube it and toss it into stir fries or curries, I tear it apart with my hands into chunks for my butter chicken or my coconut lime chicken. I mash it to make my vegan ricotta and to use in these amazing steamed Indonesian tofu pepes. I grate it using a box grater to mimic small pieces of chicken in my Portuguese chicken and rice soup. And what's the other one? Oh, I even just crush it with my hands to make a tofu scramble, which mimics scrambled eggs. And I blend it. So silken tofu or soft tofu is great for blending to make thin sauces, but just like Nova said how they blend their medium tofu, I blend firm tofu to make thicker spreads like my vegan cream cheese or my vegan queijo fresco, my Portuguese soft cheese. And all the vegan Portuguese recipes I've mentioned are now available in our new cookbook, which is linked below for you if you want to get yourself a copy. I should mention that many of these recipes I'm using tofu to mimic an animal-based ingredient. So I've created vegan recipes for things that I used to enjoy that are made with cheese or chicken or eggs. But there is a vast world of tofu recipes for which tofu is the ingredient that's actually supposed to be in them. So there are so many delicious Asian recipes, for instance, where tofu is intentionally and traditionally the ingredient that's used. So leave me a comment down below with, let's say, your top 3 tofu recipes. I want to know what you're making with tofu. I think this is Bryan's favorite part of the video, the part where we get to eat and taste test these products. So here we have their medium tofu, and I mentioned before that it's on the firmer side of the medium spectrum, but you can see that there is moisture in there and some water in there, so it's a little bit softer than firm. Then we have sprouted tofu, which we haven't tried yet, and we have their smoked tofu and their what is it, chili or garlic, dill, and chili pepper smoked tofu. They actually, we don't have it here, but they have a version of their medium tofu that's flavored with garlic and dill.
It was amazing. We ate it all. That's why it's not here.
I know. I didn't realize that we didn't have a label on it. It was a sample that they gave us, and we ate it all because it was amazing. I think we put it on sandwiches. I didn't do anything to it. Just sliced it, put it on sandwiches, and it was amazing. Want to taste the medium tofu?
Tastes like bocconcini cheese.
It totally does. Like the texture is just like bocconcini cheese, and like how bocconcini cheese is perfectly delicious on its own. Like maybe you put a little bit of salt on it and you can have it as an appetizer. This tofu is honestly the best tofu that we've ever had. There's just so much more depth to the flavor than there is with other store-bought brands that aren't artisan made, and it's so milky and creamy. I think we have footage of me tasting it at the factory.
It's so layered that you can taste the beaniness, but there's also so much more depth to the flavor.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the flavor of tofu because it sits in that plastic container or plastic bag, and it just kind of loses a lot of its flavor over time. But when it's fresh like this,
It's such
totally
a great
different.
aftertaste.
Yeah.
Kind of the regular tofu taste sits like on the top, but then these ones have so much more depth underneath. And the sprouted tofu, we haven't tried yet, and I don't think I've ever seen another brand that has sprouted tofu. So what they do is that they soak the beans and then they sprout them for a night. So they soak the beans as normal and then they sprout them for a night. And if you remember from our video on how to sprout at home, as soon as the bean cracks open and the root grows out of it, it unlocks this whole new world of nutrition and benefits, and the protein content goes up, and the beans are actually a little bit easier to digest. So Nova was saying that she's had customers who buy this one and have talked about how it's easier on their digestion if they're a little sensitive to soy or beans in general. So we haven't tried this. Let's see if we can taste the difference from the medium.
Tastes a little wetter.
There's a little more moisture.
It's so good. Oh, I'm going for another. Oh yeah, this is so good.
I wonder if the taste is a little more mild even than, I think the taste is even just slightly more mild than the medium, but they're pretty similar.
I like it better than the medium.
Oh yeah?
Got a little bit more flavor to it.
Oh, I just said I feel like it has less flavor. It's also 9 o'clock at night.
I don't know.
We've been filming for a long time.
Yeah, you think so?
I think so, hang on.
So, medium.
I think it honestly, the sprouted almost tastes more like green. It kind of tastes like a...
You can taste colors?
I'm very talented.
But I think it has more flavor than the medium firm. They're both great. I think if I had to choose, I prefer the
You
sprouted.
get the sprouted. Oh, let me see. So I said that usually there's a higher protein content. What's the difference here? So the medium tofu has 10 grams of protein in 100 grams of tofu. And this one has 14 in 100 grams of tofu. So yeah, higher protein content. You're going for this.
Take these away.
Smoked tofu. If you haven't had smoked tofu,
You're not living.
it's so different. It even like looks like cheese. Like the texture is completely different. So it's all like awesome for sandwiches, and these are so good that I would just straight put this on a charcuterie board with crackers and spreads. It's like if...
Sorry, I just hang up. I'm eating so much. That looks like cheese.
If you're used to just kind of like cutting off a block of cheese for a snack or like eating a piece of bologna or something.
Catherine's dad. I'm looking at you.
I know. And I used to do it too. So now I'll just cut myself a piece of smoked tofu. I actually used to work at a little vegan grocery store, and there was a woman who worked there that wasn't plant-based, and she would call this cheese and totally thought it was cheese. And I was like, it's a vegan grocery store, it's not cheese, but it's pretty convincing. And these flavored ones, I won't give away any of their secrets of how they infuse this with so much flavor, but these are amazing.
Look at that. It looks like a...
Oh my God.
Tofu Deb knows what she's doing.
She does.
She doesn't mess around. This is good tofu. This is great tofu.
That has so much flavor. The chili and the garlic and the dill. Yeah.
Ooh.
Like spiced meats. Again, like a charcuterie board where you'd have a spiced meat on it.
I would put that in a sandwich.
This is your substitute.
This is the best tofu I've ever had. People who say tofu doesn't taste like anything, you're doing it wrong. And all the myths about like I don't have boobies. And I know a lot of dudes who would be caught dead eating tofu, and they have boobies.
Yes, the only thing that I haven't really touched on in this video is the health side of things, because I'm not a nutritionist or a scientist. But Soya Nova uses all organic, non-GMO soybeans that are Canadian grown, and they're certified organic. So that's how they can ensure that they have the best tasting product and the healthiest product for you. And when you go to the grocery store, you will see that there are organic and non-organic tofu options. Honestly, the organic options are really not that much pricier than the regular ones, and they're so abundant. Like, I never have problems finding organic tofu versus non-organic tofu.
Right beside each other.
Yeah. And there's not very much of a difference in price.
No. This tofu is blowing my mind. This tofu is so good.
We might have to cut some more. And we've got a lot of tofu to eat next.
Yeah, we also want to really thank Soya Nova because they gave us an entire cooler full of tofu to take home. It was very generous.
They did.
And it was awesome.
Amazing.
And we put a pretty good dent in it, speaking of which.
I took them away from you, remember? Yeah. And so we obviously consume soy, we enjoy soy, we eat a lot of it. There are a lot of myths out there on the internet, or a lot of confusion, and so you might be unsure about the health benefits versus any health risks with soy. And from what I know, it's high in protein, so it's a great alternative if you're trying to incorporate more plant-based protein sources into your diet instead of maybe cheese or meat. And it contains all essential amino acids, it's got a ton of vitamins and minerals. And if you're interested in getting more detail about the health side of soy, then let me know in the comments, and I'll see if I can get someone else on our show who's more qualified than I am to speak to those points. But do your own research, make sure that you are looking at trusted scientific sources for the best quality information. You can decide if you want to eat soy like we do.
This is next level tofu. I think this would make anybody a convert. It's that good.
Oh, definitely. Mom, Dad, Ron, Judy, when you come over, we're getting you some of this tofu.
We're going to Salt Spring.
Yeah.
This makes me want to just eat tofu. Like, I used to see people and they're like, oh, I just eat my tofu raw. And I'd be like, you animal. What do you mean raw? Like, you gotta marinate it. It's like chicken or something. Like, it doesn't taste like anything. This tofu.
Bring on the raw.
Bring on the raw. This is amazing. I'm just eating protein over here.
Yeah, you got no boobies.
Yeah. Look at that.
If you are anywhere in Western Canada, then make sure you find a seller of Soya Nova. And they actually sell online as well through Spud, so you can order all of these amazing products. And they actually also have a farm stand on Salt Spring Island at their production facility, and you can buy it straight from a fridge that they have at the end of their property.
I believe so. Yeah, you leave money like a farm stand. You leave money and take fruit, but in this case, you take the best tofu you've ever eaten in your life.
Hit that subscribe button if you've loved this video, and come visit Salt Spring Island.
Do you want to see a charcuterie board with tofu on it? Is that a video / recipe you'd like to see? Because we could probably figure out some other things with like...
I have some like soft cheeses that are sort of like spreadable New Year's vegan charcuterie.
Let us know, because I want to eat more of this. Being vegan's cool. You can't eat chicken like this. You'll die.